You have a rare presence, Adeline.
My husband says the same thing.
Rain hammered the hillside homes of Carmel Ridge. Wind rushed through the tall trees along the quiet streets, and the Pacific Ocean roared against the cliffs below. Inside her house, Adeline Mercer stood alone. The power had gone out minutes earlier. Every house along the street sat in darkness. No lights, no sound except rain against the windows. Her husband Calder was not home. Another coastal construction project had kept him traveling for days. Late nights, long meetings, constant site inspections. Adeline supported his work, yet evenings like this felt unusually quiet. Lightning flashed across the sky and briefly filled the living room with white light. The house returned to darkness again. Adeline walked toward the window and looked outside. The entire neighborhood seemed frozen by the storm. Then a knock broke the silence. 3 steady knocks on the front door. She paused. Another flash of lightning lit the porch outside. A tall figure stood there. Lucian Vale, her neighbor. Rain soaked his coat as he held a flashlight in one hand. Adeline opened the door carefully. Lucian greeted her with calm confidence. "Power lines went down near the corner," he said. "I brought a flashlight. I thought you might need help checking your electrical panel." His voice sounded relaxed, almost reassuring. Adeline stepped aside and allowed him inside. The door closed. The living room remained dark except for the thin beam from his flashlight. Outside, the storm continued. Inside, something far more complicated had just begun. The beam from Lucian's flashlight moved slowly across the living room walls. Adeline watched quietly as he walked toward the hallway that led to the electrical panel. Rain continued striking the roof above them, and the sound of wind pressed against the windows. The house felt smaller in the dark. Lucian opened the electrical box and checked the switches with calm focus. "It's nothing serious," he said after a moment. "The storm must have triggered the breaker." Within seconds, the lights flickered. Electricity returned. The living room brightened again. Lucian closed the panel and turned back toward her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain outside softened slightly, though thunder still rolled across the ocean. Lucian glanced around the quiet house. "You're here alone tonight?" he asked. Adeline nodded. "Calder is working on a coastal project near San Luis Obispo. He'll return tomorrow." Lucian listened carefully. "Your husband works a lot," he said. "He cares about what he builds," Adeline replied. "That matters to him." Lucian gave a small smile. "And to you?" Adeline answered without hesitation. "Of course." Silence followed. Lucian walked toward the front door, yet his expression remained thoughtful, as though something on his mind had not been said. The storm outside continued moving across Carmel Ridge, and inside that quiet house, a conversation was about to begin that would test everything Adeline believed about loyalty. Lucian paused near the door. His hand rested on the handle, yet he did not open it. The rain outside had slowed to a steady rhythm. Water slid down the windows, while the wind continued moving through the trees along the hillside. Inside the house, the room felt still. Lucian turned back toward Adeline. For a moment he simply studied her expression. Adeline noticed the pause immediately. "Thank you for fixing the breaker," she said politely. "The storm caught the whole neighborhood off guard." Lucian nodded. "It happens along the coast," he replied. "Power lines rarely survive strong winds." He stepped a little closer, though his posture remained relaxed. The distance between them shortened. Adeline felt the shift in the room. Lucian had visited her home before during renovation discussions. Those meetings always stayed professional. Tonight felt different. Perhaps it was the storm. Perhaps it was the quiet house. Or perhaps it was the way Lucian watched her, as though weighing every word before speaking. "You handle quiet evenings well," he said after a moment. Adeline tilted her head slightly. "I enjoy peace," she replied. "Not everyone does." Lucian gave a faint smile. "Peace is comfortable," he said. His voice lowered slightly. "But sometimes people mistake comfort for happiness." The words hung in the room. Adeline felt the conversation turning in a direction she did not like, and Lucian had not stepped any closer to the door. Adeline folded her arms lightly and kept her voice calm. "I'm happy," she said. Lucian did not answer right away. Instead, he walked slowly toward the window and looked out at the rain sliding down the glass. The neighborhood lights had begun returning house by house as electricity stabilized along the street. Lucian spoke without turning around. "I've spent years working with people in business," he said. "You learn a lot about human behavior." Adeline remained quiet. He turned back toward her. "People say many things about loyalty," he continued. "They promise commitment, respect, devotion." His eyes held hers. "But when life becomes complicated, those promises begin to change." Adeline recognized the direction of his words. Her voice remained steady. "Why are you telling me this?" Lucian took a slow breath. "Because I've been watching you," he said calmly. The sentence surprised her. Lucian continued. "You care about your husband. Anyone can see that." Adeline did not respond. Lucian stepped slightly closer, though his tone remained controlled. "But loyalty becomes difficult when someone feels invisible," he said. The room felt quiet again. Outside, thunder rolled across the ocean. Lucian's next question came softly. "Tell me something honestly," he said. "Are you always this loyal?" Adeline did not look away. Lucian's question hung in the quiet room, while rain tapped steadily against the windows. She answered without hesitation. "Yes," she said. "I am." Lucian watched her closely. Adeline continued. "I can never cheat on my husband." Her voice carried calm certainty. No anger, no doubt. Lucian remained silent for a moment, studying her expression as if measuring whether she truly meant those words. "You sound sure," he said quietly. "I am sure," Adeline replied. Lucian walked slowly toward the door again. His hand touched the handle, but before opening it, he looked back once more. "People say many things when life feels simple," he said. Adeline's expression did not change. "Loyalty is not built on convenience," she answered. "It shows when things become difficult." Lucian held her gaze for a few seconds longer, then opened the door. Cool night air rushed inside. "Most people talk about loyalty," he said before stepping outside. "Few people prove it." The door closed behind him. Adeline stood alone in the quiet living room. But one truth remained. Lucian Vale had not given up, and sometimes the greatest test of love begins when someone refuses to accept the word no. Before we continue this story, tell me something. Do you believe loyalty survives temptation? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy powerful stories about love, choices, and consequences, subscribe to Twisted Love Tales with Mr. Easton. Because before that storm changed everything, their lives had been peaceful. Long before Adeline Mercer became known for her elegant interior designs along the California coast, her world revolved around a small workshop near the ocean. The furniture studio stood on a quiet street, not far from the shoreline. Salt air drifted through open windows, carrying the scent of the sea into the workspace where Adeline's parents spent most of their days. The shop specialized in restoring antique furniture. Old chairs, wooden cabinets, and carved tables arrived worn and faded. Some pieces had been passed through generations of families. Others came from estate sales, their history nearly forgotten. To most people, they looked damaged. To Adeline's parents, they looked full of possibility. As a child, Adeline spent many afternoons in that workshop. She often sat on a tall stool near the workbench while her father carefully sanded rough wooden surfaces. Fine dust floated in the sunlight that poured through the windows. Her mother worked beside him, applying polish and restoring small details with steady hands. Adeline watched every step with quiet fascination. She noticed how slowly they worked. They never rushed a project. "Good work takes patience," her father often told her. Sometimes customers visited the shop to see the progress of their furniture. Many arrived worried about whether their treasured pieces could be saved. Adeline loved watching their reactions. When the final restoration was complete, the furniture often looked better than anyone expected. Colors returned. Carvings became visible again. The wood shined with warmth. The transformation always brought smiles. Those early days taught Adeline something simple but important. Care could restore things people thought were beyond repair. Years later, when she began designing homes, that lesson stayed close to her heart. Because she believed spaces, like relationships, grew stronger when people treated them with patience and respect. And the idea of protecting what mattered most became the foundation of the life she would eventually build. Adeline's parents believed lessons about life, often appeared in ordinary moments. They did not teach through long speeches. Instead, they let their daily work demonstrate what patience looked like. Each piece of furniture that entered their shop carried its own history. Some tables showed deep scratches from decades of use. Chairs arrived with loose joints or faded paint. Adeline once asked her father why customers brought such damaged items instead of buying new ones. Her father placed his tools down and smiled. "Because memories live in these pieces," he said. He explained that a dining table might hold the story of countless family meals. A rocking chair might have comforted several generations of children. Throwing them away meant losing part of that history. Adeline's mother added another thought while polishing the armrest of an old chair. "Strong things last when people care for them," she said. The words stayed with Adeline. Her parents treated every project with attention. They inspected the wood carefully before starting repairs. They discussed which polish would protect the surface best. Sometimes a single table required weeks of work. Adeline noticed something else during those long projects. Her parents rarely argued. When problems appeared, they spoke calmly and found solutions together. Their partnership impressed her more than the finished furniture. One evening, while closing the shop, Adeline asked her mother a question. "How do you always stay so patient?" Her mother wiped her hands and looked at her thoughtfully. "Because the things that matter most deserve time," she replied. Adeline carried that idea into every stage of her life. Years later, when people asked why loyalty mattered so deeply to her, the answer traced back to that quiet workshop near the ocean. Because she had watched patience protect something far more valuable than furniture. It protected relationships. Adeline's path eventually led her toward interior design. She studied carefully during college, focusing on how spaces influenced emotion and comfort. Her approach remained different from many designers who chase trends. Adeline cared more about balance and warmth. After graduation, she opened a small design studio in Carmel Ridge, a coastal town known for its hillside homes and sweeping ocean views. Her reputation grew slowly but steadily. Clients appreciated her thoughtful designs. She listened closely to their ideas and created spaces that felt welcoming rather than overwhelming. One afternoon, a new consultation request arrived. A structural engineer overseeing a coastal housing project wanted to discuss interior planning for one of the properties. That engineer was Calder Mercer. Their first meeting took place at the construction site overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The home stood unfinished on the hillside, surrounded by scaffolding and building materials. Workers moved through the structure while waves crashed below the cliffs. Calder greeted her with a firm handshake and a calm smile. He explained the layout of the house and the challenges of building near the coastline. Wind, moisture, and salt air required careful structural planning. Adeline listened with interest. She admired how clearly he explained his work. Calder, in turn, noticed how thoughtfully she studied the space. She asked questions about lighting, window placement, and how the homeowners planned to use each room. Their conversation lasted longer than either expected. Before leaving, Calder walked with her to the edge of the property, where the ocean stretched across the horizon. "The view makes the entire project worthwhile," he said. Adeline nodded. "It reminds people what home should feel like," she replied. That simple exchange marked the beginning of a connection neither of them rushed. But from the start, mutual respect shaped every conversation they shared. After their first meeting, Adeline and Calder continued working together on several design decisions for the coastal property. Professional conversations gradually turned into personal ones. They often discussed ideas while standing on the unfinished balcony overlooking the ocean. Construction crews worked below while seagulls circled above the cliffs. During those moments, Adeline noticed something about Calder. He never tried to impress her. He spoke with quiet confidence and listened carefully when she shared her opinions about the design. Their collaboration made the project enjoyable. When the home was finally completed, Calder invited her to walk through the finished space one last time. Sunlight poured through the large windows, illuminating the warm tones Adeline had chosen for the interior. They stood together in the living room, admiring how the design blended with the coastal view. "Your work changed the entire feeling of this place," Calder said. Adeline smiled politely. "Your structure made it possible." After that day, their conversations continued outside the project. Sometimes they met for coffee near the harbor. Other evenings they walked along the beach where waves rolled gently onto the sand. Their relationship grew slowly. Neither felt pressure to rush. Calder respected Adeline's independence and admired her dedication to her work. Adeline appreciated his calm personality and steady character. Months passed before Calder finally asked if she would like to share dinner with him outside their usual casual meetings. Adeline agreed. That dinner lasted hours. They talked about their families, their careers, and their hopes for the future. By the time they left the restaurant, both understood something meaningful had begun. And unlike many rushed romances they had witnessed around them, their connection grew stronger through patience and honesty. 4 years after their first meeting, Adeline and Calder married in a small ceremony near the ocean. They chose a quiet location along the coastline where waves could be heard rolling against the rocks below the cliffs. Close friends and family gathered to celebrate with them. The ceremony remained simple, reflecting the values they shared: trust, patience, and partnership. Their marriage settled into a steady rhythm. Calder continued working on structural engineering projects throughout California's coastal communities. His responsibilities often required long hours on construction sites. Adeline expanded her interior design studio in Carmel Ridge. Though their schedules became busy, they protected one tradition carefully. Friday evenings belonged only to them. No work calls, no project discussions. They chose a restaurant near the harbor or prepared dinner together at home. During those evenings they spoke about life, shared ideas, and sometimes planned future travels along the coastline. Those quiet dinners strengthened their bond. 5 years into their marriage, they purchased a home overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The neighborhood felt peaceful. Tree-lined streets curved along the hillside while neighbors greeted each other during morning walks. Gardens filled the spaces between modern homes, and sunsets often painted the ocean sky with warm colors. Adeline felt grateful for the life she had built. Her childhood lessons about patience and care had guided her well. She believed loyalty protected relationships the same way careful restoration protected antique furniture. Both required effort. Both required attention. And both lasted longer when people respected what they had. For years their marriage moved forward with calm stability, until the day a new neighbor arrived on their quiet street. And his presence slowly began testing everything Adeline believed about loyalty. Life along the hillside neighborhood of Carmel Ridge followed a steady rhythm. Morning joggers passed through the tree-lined streets before sunrise. Gardeners watered flowers that overlooked the ocean. By evening, many residents walked along the quiet sidewalks, while the sky turned soft shades of orange above the Pacific. Adeline had grown comfortable with that peaceful routine. The neighborhood rarely changed. Then one week, moving trucks appeared in the large house next door. The property had remained empty for nearly a year after its previous owners relocated to another state. Most neighbors assumed it would stay quiet for a while longer. Instead, a convoy of trucks arrived early Monday morning. Workers unloaded large furniture crates, framed artwork, and polished wooden cabinets. The activity lasted nearly 3 days. People walking past the property slowed down to observe the unusual movement. Adeline noticed it while watering the flowers near her front porch. Tall wooden gates stood open while workers carried expensive pieces inside the house. The property itself looked larger than most homes on the street, with wide windows facing the ocean and a spacious stone patio. Whoever moved in clearly valued comfort. By the second evening, the trucks had disappeared, and the house lights glowed warmly against the darkening sky. Neighbors soon learned the new resident's name, Lucien Vale. The name traveled quickly through casual conversations along the street. Some people recognized it immediately. Others searched online and discovered articles connected to several luxury apartment developments across California. Lucien Vale had built a strong reputation in real estate investment. Successful, wealthy, ambitious. Adeline listened to these conversations with mild curiosity but little concern. New neighbors arrived from time to time. Most blended quietly into the community. At that moment, she had no reason to believe Lucien Vale's arrival would affect her life in any meaningful way. Yet sometimes change begins with something as simple as a moving truck appearing next door. Within days of Lucien Vale settling into the neighborhood, people began noticing him during their daily routines. He moved through Carmel Ridge with quiet confidence. Unlike many wealthy residents who preferred privacy, Lucien greeted neighbors openly. Morning walkers often saw him jogging along the hillside roads while the ocean mist still hovered above the cliffs. He dressed simply but neatly, often wearing fitted jackets or relaxed business attire that reflected a polished lifestyle. Adeline first saw him clearly one afternoon while leaving her design studio. Lucien stood beside his car, speaking with a delivery driver. His voice sounded calm and direct, the kind of tone used by someone accustomed to giving instructions. When the driver left, Lucien turned toward the street and noticed her approaching. Their eyes met briefly. He nodded politely. Adeline returned the greeting and continued walking. The moment lasted only seconds, yet something about his presence stood out. Lucien carried himself with steady assurance, the kind developed by people who spent years leading businesses and managing large projects. Over the next few days, Adeline noticed him more often. Sometimes he worked in his front yard reviewing documents on a tablet. Other times he spoke with contractors who visited the property to inspect small upgrades around the house. The home already looked luxurious, but Lucien seemed determined to refine it further. Neighbors soon shared additional details about his professional success. He owned several upscale residential complexes in major California cities. His investments had grown quickly over the past decade. Despite that success, Lucien appeared approachable. He greeted people politely and occasionally joined casual conversations near the mailbox area along the street. Adeline assumed he would remain simply another neighbor among many, but Lucien seemed unusually attentive to the people around him, especially to her. A week after Lucien's arrival, Adeline finally spoke with him for the first time. That afternoon, the coastal air felt warm and calm. The wind had softened, leaving the ocean surface smooth beneath the bright sky. Adeline knelt beside the flower beds near her front porch, trimming small branches and watering the lavender plants that lined the walkway. Gardening helped her relax after long hours working on design projects. Footsteps approached along the sidewalk.
Good afternoon. You must be my neighbor.
Welcome to Carmel Ridge.
She looked up and saw Lucien walking toward his driveway. He paused when he noticed her. "Good afternoon," he said with a friendly smile. Adeline stood and brushed soil from her hands. "Hello," she replied politely. Lucien introduced himself, though she already recognized his name from neighborhood conversations. "I just moved in next door," he said. "I hope the moving trucks didn't disturb anyone too much." Adeline laughed lightly. "The street rarely sees that much activity," she admitted. "But it gave everyone something interesting to watch." Lucien glanced toward her garden. "These flowers look beautiful," he said. "You take good care of them." "Thank you," Adeline replied. "I enjoy keeping the space peaceful." They spoke for several minutes about the neighborhood. Lucien asked about the best walking paths along the coastline and which local cafes people recommended. Adeline shared a few suggestions and mentioned the small harbor restaurant she and Calder often visited on Fridays. The conversation remained comfortable. Before leaving, Lucien asked about her profession, after noticing the design samples visible through the open front window of her home studio. "I'm an interior designer," she explained. Lucien's expression brightened slightly. "That's interesting," he said. "I may need professional advice soon." Adeline nodded politely. At that moment, the conversation felt like a normal exchange between neighbors. But Lucien watched her with careful attention as he walked back toward his house, as though their brief meeting had already captured his interest. After that first conversation, Lucien and Adeline crossed paths frequently. Morning walks sometimes brought them to the same corner of the street. Other times, they spoke briefly while collecting mail from the neighborhood boxes near the entrance road. At first, their discussions remained simple. Lucien asked about local restaurants and scenic trails along the coastline. Adeline answered kindly, always keeping the exchanges short and friendly. Calder occasionally joined them when he returned home early from construction sites. During those moments, Lucien greeted him with equal politeness. "Your wife speaks highly of this neighborhood," Lucien said once during a short conversation. Calder smiled. "She helped us choose it," he replied. "Adeline understands what makes a home feel comfortable." Lucien nodded thoughtfully. "You're fortunate." Adeline noticed that Lucien spoke with curiosity about many subjects: travel, architecture, business. He shared stories about visiting cities across the country while developing new apartment communities. Some of his experiences sounded fascinating, filled with opportunities and challenges most people never encountered. Adeline enjoyed listening to those stories. Yet gradually she sensed a small shift in their conversations. Lucien began asking questions that focused more on her life than on the neighborhood. How long have you lived here? What inspired you to start your design studio? What do you enjoy doing when you're not working? The questions sounded harmless. Still, his attention felt unusually focused. Adeline answered politely, but avoided sharing too many personal details. Lucien always respected the boundaries of their conversations. He never behaved rudely, yet the way he listened suggested a deeper interest than simple neighborly curiosity. And though Adeline could not fully explain why, she began noticing his presence more often than before. A few weeks later, Lucien contacted Adeline about the renovation he had mentioned during their first meeting. He planned to adjust several interior spaces inside his house and wanted professional design input. Adeline agreed to review the project. The meeting took place at her design studio, one quiet afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the windows while sketches and material samples covered the work table. Lucien arrived precisely on time. He placed a folder of architectural plans on the table and explained the changes he hoped to make inside the house. Most involved improving lighting and updating certain rooms to reflect his personal style. Adeline studied the plans carefully. Her suggestions focused on creating warmth and balance within the large spaces. She explained how colors, textures, and lighting could transform the atmosphere of a home. Lucien listened with genuine interest. "You have an impressive eye for detail," he said. Adeline smiled politely and continued discussing the renovation ideas. As the meeting progressed, Lucien asked several thoughtful questions about design principles. Then his tone shifted slightly. "You speak about spaces with a lot of passion," he said. "That kind of dedication is rare." Adeline thanked him and redirected the conversation toward the renovation schedule. Lucien leaned back in his chair and studied her expression. "There's something else I noticed," he added. Adeline looked up. "You bring a calm presence into a room," he said. "People feel comfortable around you." The compliment sounded sincere. Still, the way he said it felt unusually personal. Adeline returned her attention to the plans on the table. "Let's focus on your living room layout," she replied gently. Lucien nodded, but his quiet smile suggested something important. His interest in Adeline extended beyond interior design. A few days after their first design meeting, Lucien contacted Adeline again. His message sounded professional and direct. He wanted to move forward with the renovation plans and asked if she would officially oversee the interior consultation for his home. Adeline considered the request carefully. Her design studio had grown steadily over the past few years, and she often worked with clients throughout the Carmel Ridge area. Taking on a project next door would be convenient. Still, she preferred maintaining clear boundaries with neighbors. After thinking it through, she agreed to review the project under normal professional terms. The following afternoon, she walked across the small stone path separating their properties and entered Lucien's house for the first official consultation. The interior reflected the scale of the property. Large windows overlooked the Pacific Ocean, allowing natural light to fill the rooms. High ceilings created open space throughout the main living areas, while polished hardwood floors stretched from the entrance hall to the ocean-facing balcony. Lucien greeted her at the door. "I'm glad you accepted the project," he said with a calm smile. Adeline returned the greeting and stepped inside, carrying her design notebook and measuring tools. They began with a walkthrough of the home. Lucien explained the changes he hoped to make. He wanted certain rooms to feel warmer and more inviting, while still maintaining the modern style of the house. Adeline listened carefully, asking questions about how he used each space. Her approach remained focused on the work: lighting adjustments, furniture placement, color balance. The conversation stayed professional, at least in the beginning. Yet even during that first consultation, Adeline sensed something unusual in the way Lucien watched her while she explained her ideas. His attention felt more focused than most clients. And while the meeting remained respectful, she noticed that Lucien seemed interested in more than design decisions alone. After the initial consultation, Lucien scheduled several follow-up meetings to discuss different sections of the house. The renovation project itself did not require constant supervision, yet he often suggested additional sessions to review design options. Sometimes the meetings took place in Adeline's studio. Other times, they occurred inside Lucien's home, as she studied lighting conditions or measured spaces for furniture placement. At first, the schedule felt normal. Many clients wanted reassurance before making changes to expensive properties. However, as weeks passed, the meetings became more frequent than expected. Lucien would send messages asking for quick advice about small details. Which shade of wood would match the flooring best? Would the living room benefit from a different arrangement of seating? Did she recommend changing the wall textures near the staircase? Most of the questions could easily wait for the next planned session. Yet Lucien preferred discussing them immediately. Adeline remained professional and helpful. Still, she began noticing how often Lucien tried to extend their conversations beyond the design work. Sometimes he asked about her design philosophy. Other times he spoke about cities he had visited during business trips, describing luxury hotels and modern apartments across the country. His stories sounded interesting, yet they slowly stretched the meetings longer than necessary. One afternoon, Adeline glanced at the clock after reviewing a lighting plan. Nearly 2 hours had passed. The actual design discussion required less than half that time. Lucien seemed comfortable letting the conversation drift. He never acted inappropriate. He never crossed a clear line. But the pattern became noticeable. The renovation project gave him many reasons to see her, and Adeline could not ignore how often those reasons appeared. As the renovation progressed, Lucien's comments toward Adeline began changing. Early conversations focused mainly on design work. Gradually, his remarks became more personal. It started with small observations. "You notice details most people miss," he said during one meeting while reviewing fabric samples. Another time, he watched her arrange color swatches across the table. "You bring order to complicated spaces," he added. Adeline usually responded with polite thanks before returning to the project. Professional compliments were common in her line of work. Clients often appreciated her attention to detail. Yet Lucien's tone carried something different. He spoke as if he studied her reactions carefully. During another consultation inside his living room, Adeline explained how soft lighting could make the space feel more welcoming in the evening. Lucien listened quietly before responding. "You have an interesting way of seeing things," he said. Adeline paused. "In design or in general?" she asked lightly. Lucien smiled. "In general." The answer made her shift the conversation back to the renovation schedule. Still, the pattern continued. Lucien often praised her creativity, her focus, and her calm manner while explaining design concepts. Each compliment sounded respectful. None crossed an obvious boundary, but the attention behind them felt more personal than professional. Adeline handled the situation with quiet composure. She kept their meetings structured around the project and avoided encouraging deeper conversations. Lucien never argued. He accepted her boundaries. Yet the thoughtful way he watched her during those meetings suggested his admiration extended far beyond interior design. And Adeline began wondering how long the situation would remain comfortable. One afternoon, the two of them reviewed plans for the main living room. Large windows faced the ocean, allowing sunlight to fill the space throughout the day. Adeline explained how certain furniture placements would make the room feel more balanced. She walked slowly across the hardwood floor while describing how the seating arrangement could create a welcoming gathering area. Lucien followed her explanation closely. After a moment, he leaned against the edge of the dining table, watching her sketch a quick layout in her notebook. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I've worked with many designers over the years." Adeline glanced up. "That comes with developing large properties," she replied. Lucien nodded. "Yes, but most focus only on aesthetics. You focus on how a space feels." Adeline returned to her notes. "That's important for comfortable homes." Lucien studied her quietly for several seconds before speaking again. "You have a rare presence," he said. The words caught her attention. "What do you mean?" Lucien chose his response carefully. "You walk into a room, and everything becomes calmer," he explained. "That kind of influence is uncommon." Adeline closed her notebook. Compliments about her work did not bother her. Yet this comment felt more personal. "Thank you," she said politely. Lucien continued. "Your husband is fortunate." Adeline held his gaze briefly before responding. "I'm fortunate as well." Her tone remained calm, but the meaning behind her words was clear. Lucien nodded slowly. The conversation returned to the renovation plans, but the moment lingered in the room. Because what Lucien admired about her had little to do with furniture or lighting. As the weeks passed, Adeline became more aware of Lucian's growing interest. He remained respectful. He never behaved aggressively. Yet the admiration behind his words became difficult to ignore. One evening they reviewed final adjustments for the dining area. The sun had begun setting outside the large windows, casting warm light across the room. Lucian poured 2 glasses of sparkling water and handed one to Adeline. "You work very hard," he said. "Do you ever take time to relax?" Adeline smiled politely. "My husband and I protect our Friday evenings," she replied. "No work, no distractions." Lucian raised an eyebrow. "A tradition?" "Yes," she said. "We believe relationships need time." Lucian considered that answer. "You speak about your husband with a lot of respect," he observed. Adeline nodded. "He deserves it." Lucian took a slow sip from his glass. "Many couples lose that connection after a few years." "Some do," Adeline replied. "But not everyone." Lucian studied her expression carefully. "You seem very certain about that." "I am," she said calmly. The conversation paused. Adeline placed her notebook back into her bag and prepared to leave. Before stepping toward the door, she spoke clearly. "Calder and I built our marriage on trust," she said. "That matters more than anything else." Lucian listened without interrupting. Her words carried no anger, only quiet certainty. "I'm glad to hear that," he replied. Adeline thanked him for the project and walked back toward her house. Lucian remained standing in the doorway, his expression thoughtful, because although Adeline had made her boundaries clear, his interest in her had not disappeared. Late one evening, the sky above Carmel Ridge turned deep shades of orange as the sun slowly sank toward the horizon. The ocean below reflected the fading light, and the quiet hillside neighborhood settled into its usual peaceful rhythm. Adeline stood near the edge of her front garden, watching the distant waves. After a long day at her design studio, moments like this helped her relax. The sound of the ocean and the calm air often cleared her mind before dinner. Across the small driveway next door, Lucian stepped outside his house. He had just finished a phone call and noticed Adeline standing by the lavender plants that lined her walkway. "Beautiful evening," he said, while walking toward the fence separating their properties. Adeline smiled politely. "It's one of the reasons people love living here." Lucian leaned lightly against the wooden railing, looking toward the ocean view. "The coastline never gets old," he replied. They stood quietly for a moment, watching the fading sunlight stretch across the water. Lucian then turned toward her. "You seem very certain about many things," he said. Adeline raised an eyebrow slightly. "What do you mean?" Lucian paused, choosing his words carefully. "You talk about loyalty with strong conviction," he said. "About your marriage, about commitment." Adeline did not appear surprised. "I believe in protecting what matters," she replied calmly. Lucian nodded slowly. Then he asked the question that would stay with her long after the evening ended. "Are you always this loyal?" His tone remained quiet. The question sounded simple, yet the meaning behind it felt far more serious than casual conversation. Adeline studied his expression for a moment, because she realized the conversation had moved far beyond design meetings or neighborly greetings. Lucian wanted to understand something about her that few people ever questioned. Adeline did not rush her answer. The evening air remained calm around them, while the last colors of sunset faded across the ocean. Lucian waited patiently. His expression revealed curiosity rather than challenge. Still, Adeline sensed that his question carried deeper meaning. She straightened slightly and looked directly at him. "Yes," she said calmly. Lucian watched her carefully. "Yes, what?" he asked. Adeline spoke with quiet certainty. "I'm always this loyal." There was no hesitation in her voice. Lucian seemed thoughtful. Adeline continued before he could respond. "I can never cheat on my husband." Her statement sounded simple, yet the conviction behind it made the message unmistakable. Lucian leaned back slightly against the railing, considering her words. "That sounds like a strong promise," he said. "It is," Adeline replied. Lucian studied her expression, as though measuring how deeply she believed what she had just said. Many people made similar statements when discussing relationships, but Adeline's tone suggested something different. She believed loyalty defined who she was, not something she practiced only when life felt comfortable. Lucian glanced briefly toward the ocean before returning his attention to her. "You speak about marriage with a lot of certainty," he said. Adeline nodded. My parents taught me something important when I was young. What was that? Lucian asked. Strong things last when people protect them. Lucian absorbed the thought quietly. The answer revealed more than her opinion about relationships. It revealed the foundation of the values she carried into every part of her life. And Lucian now understood just how firmly those values were rooted in her character. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The quiet neighborhood carried the soft sound of waves moving against the cliffs below. Lucian looked thoughtful, as if weighing Adeline's words carefully. You're fortunate, he said eventually. Adeline tilted her head slightly. How so? Lucian turned his attention toward the horizon again. Because life feels clear when people are certain about their choices. Adeline sensed something hidden within the comment. What do you mean by that? She asked. Lucian rested his hands on the railing. I've spent many years watching relationships, he explained calmly. Business partnerships, marriages, friendships. He paused briefly before continuing. At the beginning, everything feels simple. Adeline listened quietly. People believe their values will never change, Lucian said. They promise loyalty, honesty, and commitment. He turned back toward her. But life has a way of becoming complicated. Adeline understood the direction of his words. Only if people allow it to, she replied. Lucian smiled faintly. That depends on the situation. Adeline folded her arms gently. My answer won't change, she said. Lucian did not challenge her directly. Instead, he spoke in a softer tone. People say many things when their lives feel stable. Adeline met his gaze without hesitation. Loyalty matters even more when life becomes difficult. Lucian nodded slowly. For a moment, his expression carried quiet respect. Yet beneath that respect remained something else. Curiosity. Because while Adeline believed her loyalty would never change, Lucian seemed interested in discovering whether real life might eventually test that belief. Over the next several weeks, Calder's work responsibilities grew heavier. A large coastal development project required constant supervision, and his role as lead structural engineer demanded frequent travel between construction sites. Many evenings he returned home long after sunset. Other nights, he stayed in nearby cities to meet with contractors early the next morning. Adeline understood the demands of his career. She had always admired Calder's dedication to building safe and beautiful homes along California's coastline. Still, the longer hours slowly changed the rhythm of their daily life. Their Friday dinner tradition remained whenever possible, but unexpected meetings occasionally forced Calder to cancel at the last minute. When that happened, he always called to explain. I'm sorry, he told her during one late phone conversation. This project has tight deadlines. Adeline reassured him gently. I know how important your work is. Calder appreciated her support. You've always been patient with my schedule, he said. Adeline smiled softly as she held the phone. That's what partners do. Despite her understanding, the house sometimes felt quieter than usual during those weeks. Calder's absence left long evenings where Adeline worked alone in her design studio, or spent time reading in the living room while the ocean breeze moved through the open windows. The peaceful hillside neighborhood remained calm, yet small changes in routine slowly created moments of solitude she had not experienced before. And during those moments, Lucian's presence next door became more noticeable. He often worked from home in the evenings, occasionally stepping outside to take calls or walk along the street. Their paths crossed more often, and though their conversations remained brief, the timing of those encounters seemed to align closely with Calder's increasing absence. With Calder traveling frequently for work, Adeline began spending more evenings alone. Her design studio occupied a bright room inside their home, filled with sketches, fabric samples, and small models of ongoing projects. Work helped her stay focused. Still, after long hours reviewing plans and answering client messages, she sometimes stepped outside to enjoy the quiet air along the hillside. One evening, she walked onto the back patio as the sun disappeared beyond the ocean. The neighborhood lights began glowing softly across the street. Lucian stood in his driveway speaking on his phone. When the call ended, he noticed her near the fence. Working late again? He asked. Adeline nodded. Design deadlines never wait. Lucian walked closer to the property line, though he remained on his side of the fence. You seem to manage everything with impressive balance, he said. Adeline smiled politely. Experience helps. Lucien glanced toward her house. Your husband still traveling? Yes, she replied. Another construction inspection tomorrow morning. Lucien considered that information quietly. That must leave you with a lot of quiet evenings. Adeline did not deny it. I'm used to it, she said. Lucien rested his arms lightly on the wooden fence between their properties. I imagine many people would find that difficult. Adeline looked toward the ocean before answering. Loyalty isn't tested when life feels easy. Lucien studied her expression carefully. No, he said softly. It's tested when someone begins noticing how often you're alone. The statement carried no accusation, only quiet observation, yet Adeline sensed something unmistakable. Lucien had begun paying close attention to the empty spaces in her schedule, and he intended to remain present within them. The small gestures began quietly. One morning, Adeline opened her front door and noticed a white bakery box placed neatly on the porch table beside her garden. A small card rested on top. Fresh croissants from Harbor Street Bakery. Thought you might enjoy them. Lucien. Adeline looked toward the neighboring house. Lucien's driveway sat empty. He had likely left early for work. The gesture surprised her. Carmel Ridge residents often exchanged small favors, yet something about this felt more intentional. She brought the pastries inside and placed them on the kitchen counter. The scent of warm butter and sugar filled the room. Later that afternoon, she sent a short message thanking him. Lucien replied quickly. Glad you liked them. The bakery opens early. I thought you deserved something good to start your day. Adeline read the message carefully. It sounded kind, yet personal. Over the following weeks, similar gestures appeared. A box of pastries. A container of specialty coffee beans from a cafe he had visited in San Francisco. Once, a book about coastal architecture left at her door after she mentioned enjoying design history. Each gift remained thoughtful but modest. Lucien never delivered them directly. They simply appeared with short notes attached. Soon after, invitations followed. Dinner at a restaurant overlooking the harbor to discuss renovation ideas. A small neighborhood gathering hosted by one of his business partners. A gallery event featuring modern interior designers. Every invitation sounded casual. Yet Adeline noticed a pattern. Lucien always suggested attending together. The attention remained polite, respectful, but consistent. And Adeline slowly realized something important. Lucien Vale did not pursue attention halfway. When he focused on something, he gave it deliberate effort. Adeline handled each invitation with the same calm response. Gratitude followed by a polite decline. When Lucien suggested dinner to discuss renovation ideas, she replied that design conversations worked best during scheduled office meetings. When he mentioned the gallery event downtown, she explained that her current project deadlines left little free time that week. Her tone always remained friendly. Never cold, never confrontational. Lucien accepted every answer without complaint. That makes sense, he wrote, after one declined invitation. Your schedule must stay busy. Another time he responded simply. Perhaps another evening. Adeline appreciated that he never argued. Still, the invitations continued. Sometimes days passed quietly. Then another message arrived suggesting a new activity. A charity event supporting coastal preservation. A weekend farmers market known for artisan foods. A private property tour hosted by one of his development partners. Lucien always framed the invitations around shared interests. Design, architecture, local culture. Adeline recognized the thought behind those suggestions. Lucien paid attention to details she mentioned during their conversations. Even while declining his invitations, she noticed the effort he invested in learning about her interests. The situation left her thoughtful. Because Lucien never behaved disrespectfully, he did not pressure her. He did not attempt to create uncomfortable situations. Yet the steady stream of invitations revealed something clear. Lucien had not forgotten the loyalty conversation they shared weeks earlier. Instead of challenging her directly, he continued offering opportunities for them to spend time together. And although Adeline refused every invitation, she sensed his patience had not faded. If anything, it seemed carefully measured. At first, Adeline dismissed Lucien's gestures as friendly enthusiasm. Many successful people maintained energetic personalities. Yet as the weeks passed, She noticed a subtle emotional shift within herself. Not attraction, not temptation, something more complicated. Recognition. Lucian's attention highlighted moments she rarely thought about before. For example, the evenings when Calder returned home too exhausted to share long conversations, or the mornings when he left before sunrise to inspect a construction site miles away. Adeline understood the demands of his career. She never questioned his dedication. Still, Lucian's gestures created contrast. The pastries arrived when she worked long hours on design plans. The thoughtful notes appeared during quiet evenings when Calder traveled for meetings. Each gesture reminded her that someone nearby noticed her daily routines. Adeline recognized the potential danger in that feeling. Attention could easily create emotional confusion if left unchecked. One evening she sat on the patio watching the sunset while reflecting on the situation. Lucian's house stood quietly next door. She knew he respected her boundaries. Yet his presence continued. Steady, patient. Adeline remembered something her mother once said while restoring an old cabinet in their workshop. Admiration can feel flattering, but respect protects relationships. The difference between those two ideas mattered more than many people realized. Lucian's attention might feel thoughtful, but Adeline understood that protecting her marriage required careful awareness of emotional boundaries. Because temptation rarely begins with dramatic decisions. It often begins with small moments of attention that slowly grow into something more complicated. A few days later, Adeline met her best friend Noelle Arden at a small cafe in downtown Carmel Ridge. The cafe overlooked a narrow harbor where fishing boats rocked gently against the docks. Morning sunlight streamed through wide windows, while the scent of roasted coffee filled the room. Noelle greeted her with a warm hug. "You look thoughtful today," she said as they sat down. Adeline smiled slightly. "I've been thinking about something." After ordering coffee, she explained the situation with Lucian. The pastries, the invitations, the steady attention. Noelle listened carefully without interrupting. She had known Adeline for years and understood how deeply loyalty shaped her character. When Adeline finished speaking, Noelle rested her hands around her coffee cup. "So he's persistent," she said. "Very," Adeline replied. "But polite?" "Yes," Noelle nodded slowly. "That makes situations like this more complicated." Adeline looked confused. "Why?" "Because obvious disrespect is easy to reject," Noelle explained. "But thoughtful attention can blur boundaries if people are not careful." Adeline considered that point. "I've declined every invitation," she said. "I know," Noelle replied. "That's not the concern." Adeline raised an eyebrow. "The real question is how his attention makes you feel." Adeline thought for a moment. "Not tempted," she said honestly. "But noticed." Noelle studied her expression. "That feeling matters," she said. "Why?" "Because when someone feels noticed during lonely moments, emotional lines can slowly shift." Adeline remained quiet. The cafe buzzed with morning conversations around them, while waves tapped softly against the harbor docks outside. And Noelle's words forced her to examine something she had not fully acknowledged yet. Noelle leaned slightly forward across the small cafe table. Her tone carried the seriousness of someone who had seen similar situations before. "Let me tell you something important," she said. Adeline listened closely. "Attention can feel flattering," Noelle continued, "especially when someone shows interest in your thoughts, your work, and your daily life." Adeline nodded. "That part is true." Noelle took a slow sip of her coffee before speaking again. "But attention and respect are not the same thing." Adeline waited for her to explain further. "Admiration focuses on how someone feels about you," Noelle said. "Respect focuses on protecting what already belongs to you." Adeline understood the difference immediately. Lucien admired her, but true respect meant protecting the marriage she had built with Calder. Noelle continued. "Some people convince themselves they're simply appreciating another person's qualities." Adeline looked thoughtful. "And that's not always wrong." "No," Noelle agreed. "But when admiration leads someone to pursue a person who is already committed, the situation becomes dangerous." Adeline rested her hands on the table. "I would never cross that line." Noelle smiled gently. "I know that." She paused before adding one final thought. "But temptation rarely arrives as something obvious." Adeline raised an eyebrow. "It arrives quietly," Noelle said, through a tension that makes a person feel valued during moments when their partner is absent. The words settled between them. Adeline understood the meaning clearly. Lucien's actions might appear thoughtful, but the deeper intention behind them required careful awareness, because protecting loyalty sometimes meant recognizing temptation long before it fully revealed itself. The weather along the coast changed quickly that evening. Dark clouds gathered over the Pacific long before sunset. By nightfall, strong wind rushed across the cliffs and rolled through the hillside streets of Carmel Ridge. Tree branches swayed under the pressure while waves crashed against the rocks below. Adeline watched the storm from the living room window. Calder had called earlier to say he would remain overnight at a construction site nearly 2 hours away. A sudden inspection meeting required his presence early the next morning. "I'll drive back tomorrow afternoon," he promised. Adeline understood. Still, as the storm intensified outside, the quiet house felt larger than usual. Rain began striking the windows with steady force. The lights flickered once, then again. Adeline placed her book on the table and stood, glancing toward the ceiling lights as they blinked uncertainly. A loud crack echoed through the distance. The power went out instantly. The entire house fell into darkness. Outside, the streetlights disappeared as well. Across the neighborhood, several homes lost electricity at the same moment. Adeline walked toward the window and looked down the street. Only brief flashes of lightning illuminated the hillside road. The storm had likely knocked down a power line somewhere nearby. She lit a small candle on the coffee table and moved toward the kitchen to find a flashlight. The quiet inside the house contrasted sharply with the roaring wind outside. Then suddenly, 3 firm knocks sounded on the front door. Adeline froze for a moment. Few people visited neighbors during storms. Another knock followed. She stepped toward the door slowly, her mind already guessing who might be standing on the other side. Because there was only one person nearby who seemed to appear whenever the evening felt unusually quiet. Adeline reached the front door and looked through the narrow glass panel beside it. Lightning flashed across the sky. The brief burst of light revealed a tall figure standing on the porch. Lucien Val. Rain covered his coat, while he held a bright flashlight in one hand. Adeline opened the door carefully. Wind pushed a wave of cold air into the hallway. Lucien stepped slightly forward, but remained outside. "I thought you might need this," he said, raising the flashlight. His voice sounded calm despite the storm. Adeline nodded. "The power went out everywhere," she said. Lucien glanced down the street. "I noticed the same thing. A line probably fell near the corner." Another gust of wind rushed across the porch. Rain continued falling steadily. "I brought an extra flashlight," Lucien added. "And I can check your electrical panel if you want. Sometimes the breaker simply shuts down during strong storms." Adeline hesitated briefly. She rarely asked neighbors for help, yet the storm continued intensifying, and Lucien already stood there offering assistance. "Thank you," she said finally. "That would be helpful." Lucien stepped inside the house. Water dripped lightly from his coat as he closed the door behind him. The candle on the coffee table cast soft light across the living room, but the hallway remained dark. Lucien switched on the flashlight and aimed the beam toward the wall. "Where is the electrical panel?" he asked. "Down the hallway near the kitchen," Adeline replied. Lucien nodded and walked slowly toward the breaker box. The beam of his flashlight moved across the walls as he examined the switches. Outside, thunder rolled across the ocean cliffs. Inside the quiet house, the distance between neighbors suddenly felt much smaller. Lucien opened the electrical panel and inspected the switches carefully. The narrow beam of the flashlight illuminated rows of circuit breakers mounted inside the metal box. Adeline stood a few steps behind him, holding the candle so he could see more clearly. Rain continued beating against the roof above them. After a moment, Lucien reached forward and flipped one of the switches. Nothing happened. He studied the panel again. "Storm probably triggered several breakers," he said. His voice remained calm and focused. Lucien adjusted 2 more switches and waited. Suddenly the lights flickered. The kitchen ceiling light glowed briefly before fading again. "Almost there," he said. He flipped one final switch. This time the lights returned fully. The hallway brightened as electricity flowed back through the house. Adeline smiled with relief. "That was faster than I expected." Lucien closed the electrical panel and stepped back. "Sometimes it's just a temporary shutdown," he explained. The system protects itself during strong power surges. Adeline placed the candle on the kitchen counter. Thank you for helping. Lucian nodded. No problem. For a moment, the two of them stood quietly in the hallway. The storm still raged outside, though the lights inside the house now glowed steadily again. Lucian glanced toward the living room. You have a comfortable home, he said. Adeline smiled politely. It means a lot to me. Lucian looked around thoughtfully before stepping back toward the living room entrance. He appeared in no hurry to leave. The rain outside slowed slightly, but thunder continued rolling across the sky, and within the calm light of the restored house, a conversation waited to begin. They returned to the living room where the candle still flickered on the coffee table. Adeline extinguished the flame now that the electricity had returned. Lucian stood near the window, watching rain slide down the glass while the wind moved through the tall trees outside. The storm came quickly tonight, he said. Adeline nodded. Coastal weather changes fast. Lucian turned back toward her. You handle unexpected situations well. Adeline gave a small laugh. Design projects teach patience. Lucian walked slowly across the room, stopping near the bookshelf along the wall. The quiet space between them felt different from their usual conversations next door. There were no design plans on the table, no professional discussions guiding their words, just the steady sound of rain outside. You spend many evenings alone here lately, Lucian said calmly. Adeline folded her arms gently. Calder's project schedule has been demanding. Lucian nodded. I've noticed. Adeline raised an eyebrow slightly. You pay close attention to the neighborhood. Lucian smiled faintly. It's hard not to notice someone who works as hard as you do. The compliment hung in the room. Adeline did not respond immediately. Lucian's tone remained respectful, but his words carried deeper meaning. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky again. For a brief moment, the entire room brightened. Then darkness returned to the night beyond the windows. Lucian turned his attention back toward her, his expression thoughtful, because the quiet atmosphere of the storm had created an opportunity he had been waiting for. Lucian leaned lightly against the back of a chair near the window. His voice lowered slightly. You speak about loyalty with strong conviction, he said. Adeline recognized the direction of the conversation immediately. Yes, she replied calmly. Lucian studied her expression carefully. Your husband must be a remarkable man. Adeline nodded. He is. Lucian walked slowly toward the center of the room. But I wonder something, he said. Adeline waited. Lucian stopped a few steps away. Does he still give you time? The question landed quietly yet firmly. Adeline felt the weight behind it. My husband works hard, she said. Lucian nodded. I see the hours he keeps. Adeline remained calm. That doesn't change how we value our marriage. Lucian looked toward the window again before speaking. Many people begin relationships with strong intentions, he said. They promise loyalty and devotion. He turned back toward her. But sometimes life becomes crowded with responsibilities. Adeline's expression remained steady. Commitment isn't measured by convenience, she replied. Lucian stepped closer to the doorway. I agree, he said softly. But people also need attention. Adeline met his gaze directly. My husband gives me everything I need. Lucian held her eyes for a moment. Thunder rolled across the ocean cliffs outside. Finally he nodded. Most people say loyalty matters, he said. He reached for the door handle. Few people prove it. Lucian stepped outside into the rain and closed the door behind him. Adeline stood alone in the quiet house once again. But the storm had left something behind. A question that lingered longer than the thunder fading over the ocean. After the storm passed, Carmel Ridge returned to its familiar calm. The wind faded. Morning sunlight reflected gently across the Pacific Ocean, and the hillside neighborhood looked peaceful again. Yet inside Adeline's mind, the previous night had left quiet questions behind. She moved slowly through her morning routine, preparing coffee while watching the ocean through the kitchen window. Lucian's words replayed in her thoughts. Does he still give you time? The question itself did not anger her, but it forced her to look carefully at the rhythm of her marriage. Calder worked hard. That had always been true. Long hours and demanding construction projects came with the career he loved. Adeline respected that dedication. Still, the reality remained clear. They had spent fewer evenings together during the past few months. Their conversations sometimes felt rushed between meetings and travel schedules. Adeline sat at the dining table with her coffee and allowed herself to reflect honestly. Her loyalty to Calder had never wavered, but relationships required attention. Her parents had taught her that lesson years ago while restoring furniture in their small workshop. Strong things last when people care for them. She remembered those words clearly. Adeline realized something important. Lucien's presence had not created weakness in her marriage, but it had revealed small spaces where distance had quietly grown. Ignoring those spaces would not strengthen anything. Addressing them honestly would. She picked up her phone and read the message Calder had sent earlier that morning. Inspection meeting finished. I'll call later today. Adeline smiled softly. When that call came, she decided she would speak openly. Because protecting a marriage required more than loyalty. It required courage to face difficult conversations before problems grew larger. That evening, Calder called as promised. Adeline answered while sitting on the patio overlooking the ocean. The sky had turned soft shades of pink as the sun disappeared beyond the water. "Hey," Calder said warmly. "Hi," she replied. They spoke about his inspection meeting first. Calder explained several structural adjustments required for the project he supervised. Adeline listened patiently, but Calder noticed something unusual. Her responses sounded thoughtful yet slightly distant. After several minutes, he paused. "Everything okay?" he asked. Adeline hesitated briefly. "Yes," she said. Calder knew her well enough to recognize when something weighed on her mind. "You sound quiet tonight," he continued. Adeline looked toward the waves moving below the cliffs. "I've just been thinking." "About what?" She considered how to answer. "About us," she said finally. Calder sat up slightly on the other end of the phone. "Is something wrong?" "No," Adeline replied calmly. "Nothing is wrong." Calder waited. Adeline continued. "But I realized something during the past few weeks." "What's that?" "Our lives have been moving very fast." Calder understood immediately. The project schedule had kept him away from home more often than usual. "I know," he admitted. "This development has been demanding." Adeline spoke gently. "I support your work. You know that." "I do. But sometimes I miss the evenings when we had time to talk without rushing." Calder listened carefully. Her tone carried no accusation, only honesty. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been away too much." Adeline appreciated his understanding, yet there was still more she needed to explain. Something that had begun affecting her thoughts during those quiet evenings at home, and Calder sensed that their conversation had not yet reached the heart of the matter. Calder leaned back in his chair and took a slow breath. "Tell me what's on your mind," he said. Adeline appreciated the openness in his voice. She chose her words carefully. "You remember our Friday dinners?" she asked. Calder smiled. "Of course. They used to feel like our reset button," she said. "No work, no distractions, just time together." Calder nodded. "I miss those nights too," Adeline continued. "I think we allowed work to slowly replace some of that time." Calder did not argue. "You're right," he admitted. "The past few months have been intense." Adeline spoke gently. "I don't blame you for working hard. But relationships still need attention," she said. Calder respected her honesty. "You're not wrong." The conversation remained calm. Neither raised their voice. Neither blamed the other. Instead, they examined their situation with mutual respect. "I'll finish this project soon," Calder said. "Once that happens, my schedule should stabilize." Adeline nodded. "That will help." Calder paused before speaking again. "But something tells me that's not the only reason you wanted to talk tonight." Adeline looked toward the ocean again. He knew her too well. "There's something else," she admitted. Calder waited patiently. "Another reason I started thinking about how we spend our time." The air between them grew quieter. Adeline realized the moment had arrived to explain what had been happening next door. Because protecting trust meant sharing uncomfortable truths. And she believed their marriage deserved complete honesty. He knew her too well. "There's something else," she admitted. Calder waited patiently. "Another reason I started thinking about how we spend our time." The air between them grew quieter. Adeline realized the moment had arrived to explain what had been happening next door. because protecting trust meant sharing uncomfortable truths, and she believed their marriage deserved complete honesty. Adeline began explaining everything. She told Calder about Lucian's arrival in the neighborhood months earlier, the renovation project, the design consultations, the pastries left at the door, the invitations she had declined. She described each detail calmly and clearly. Calder listened without interrupting. When she finished, silence filled the phone line for a moment. "You handled everything appropriately," Calder said finally. Adeline appreciated his trust. "I never encouraged anything," she replied. "I know." Calder's voice remained steady. "But you felt uncomfortable." "A little," Adeline admitted. Calder asked one more question. "Has he crossed any boundaries?" "No," she said honestly. "He has always remained respectful." Calder considered that carefully. "But persistent," he said. "Yes." Adeline then described the stormy night, Lucian knocking on the door, fixing the electrical panel, the conversation about loyalty, the question he asked, "Does he still give you time?" Calder listened quietly. Instead of anger, his response showed thoughtfulness. "He was testing something," Calder said. Adeline nodded. "I realized that." Calder's voice grew more determined. "And you answered clearly." "I did." Calder respected her strength. "You've always protected our marriage," he said. Adeline smiled softly. "Because it matters to me." Calder paused briefly. "Thank you for telling me." Adeline felt relief after sharing the truth. Because secrets had no place in the relationship they built. Yet Calder's next decision would soon change the direction of everything happening next door. The following morning, Calder made a decision. Instead of remaining near the construction site for another full week as originally planned, he rearranged several meetings and delegated certain inspections to trusted colleagues. By early afternoon, he began driving back toward Carmel Ridge. The coastal highway stretched along the cliffs as waves rolled steadily below. During the drive, Calder reflected on Adeline's words. He trusted her completely. That trust had never been in question. Still, the situation with Lucian deserved attention. Not anger, not confrontation, but clarity. Calder believed strong relationships should never hide from uncomfortable circumstances. When he arrived home earlier than expected, the sun still hung high above the ocean. Adeline stepped outside when she heard his car in the driveway. "You're back already?" she asked with surprise. Calder smiled. "I finished what needed to be done." He embraced her warmly. "I missed you." Adeline laughed softly. "I missed you too." The quiet moment reassured both of them. After unpacking his bags, Calder walked outside toward the garden near the property line. Lucian stood in his driveway, reviewing documents on a tablet. When he noticed Calder, he nodded politely. "Good afternoon," Lucian said. "Good afternoon," Calder replied calmly. Their conversation remained brief, friendly, respectful. Yet something had changed. Lucian quickly sensed it. Calder's presence in the neighborhood had returned sooner than expected, and the quiet distance between the two men now carried new awareness. Because Lucian understood something important. Adeline had shared the truth with her husband, which meant the quiet influence he hoped to build had now been fully revealed. The days following Calder's early return settled into a quiet routine. Carmel Ridge continued its peaceful rhythm. Morning walkers moved through the curved hillside streets, and ocean air drifted gently through the neighborhood gardens. Yet something subtle had shifted. Lucian noticed it immediately. Calder's presence beside Adeline during evening walks and morning coffee on the patio made the dynamic between neighbors clearer than before. A few days later, Lucian approached the property line while Calder worked in the garage organizing tools. Adeline stood near the garden trimming lavender branches. "Adeline," Lucian said calmly. She looked up. "Do you have a moment?" She nodded and stepped closer to the wooden fence separating their yards. Lucian's posture appeared thoughtful rather than confident. "I want to say something directly," he began. Adeline waited quietly. "I realize my attention toward you may have crossed emotional boundaries." His tone carried sincerity. "I never intended to disrespect your marriage." Adeline appreciated the honesty. Lucian continued. "You made your position clear many times. I respected that. But I also continued offering invitations and gestures that might have created pressure." Adeline shook her head gently. "You were always polite." Lucian nodded. Yes, but politeness doesn't always mean a situation is appropriate. He paused briefly. You deserve peace in your own home without feeling observed or evaluated. Adeline listened carefully. Lucien spoke one final sentence. I apologize if my actions created discomfort. Adeline answered calmly. I appreciate you saying that. The conversation ended with quiet understanding. Lucien stepped back toward his house, leaving the garden peaceful once again, because sometimes the strongest acknowledgement of a boundary arrives when someone recognizes they should have respected it sooner. That evening, Adeline told Calder about Lucien's apology. They sat together on the patio, watching the sunset stretch across the Pacific Ocean. Calder listened carefully as she explained the conversation. He seemed sincere, she said. Calder nodded. People sometimes realize their mistakes after reflection. Adeline appreciated Calder's calm response. He never reacted with anger toward Lucien. Instead, he focused on what mattered most, their relationship. Calder reached for her hand. You handled everything with integrity, he said. Adeline smiled softly. I never questioned what we built. Calder looked toward the ocean for a moment. I know, Adeline continued. Lucien's attention never changed how I feel about our marriage. Calder squeezed her hand gently. That means more than you know. The quiet evening air carried the scent of the ocean while waves rolled against the cliffs below. Adeline leaned slightly against Calder's shoulder. My parents taught me something when I was young, she said. Calder turned toward her. What was it? Strong things last when people protect them. Calder smiled. That lesson served you well. Adeline laughed lightly. It served both of us. Their conversation continued easily as the sky slowly darkened. No tension remained between them. Only appreciation for the honesty that protected their relationship. Because loyalty is not proven through words alone. It shows through consistent choices. And Adeline had never allowed anyone to weaken the foundation she and Calder built together. In the weeks that followed, Calder adjusted his work schedule. The coastal development project had reached its final phase, allowing him to delegate many responsibilities to trusted engineers. For the first time in months, he spent more evenings at home. Adeline noticed the difference immediately. Their Friday dinner tradition returned without interruptions. Some evenings they walked along the harbor after sunset, enjoying quiet conversations while the lights of fishing boats reflected on the water. Other nights, they cooked together in their kitchen, while music played softly in the background. The simple routines reminded them why their relationship had always felt strong. One Saturday morning, Calder surprised Adeline with a short trip along the coastline. They drove north along scenic roads where cliffs dropped sharply toward the ocean. At a small overlook, they stopped to watch waves roll across the shoreline. This place feels peaceful, Calder said. Adeline smiled. It reminds me of the first house we worked on together. Calder laughed. That unfinished balcony with the ocean view. Adeline nodded. That's where everything started. The memory strengthened the connection between them. They realized how important it was to protect time together, despite busy careers. Calder eventually returned to regular work hours, but he remained careful about preserving their shared routines. Because both understood something clearly. Strong relationships do not maintain themselves automatically. They grow stronger when people continue investing attention and care. And after facing a quiet challenge from outside their marriage, Calder and Adeline valued that investment more than ever. Several months later, the neighborhood noticed another change. Large moving trucks appeared once again in Lucien Vale's driveway. The activity lasted nearly an entire day, as workers carried furniture and artwork out of the house. Adeline watched from her front porch with quiet curiosity. Lucien walked across the lawn toward the fence separating their properties. I'm relocating for a new development project, he explained. Adeline nodded. That sounds like a big opportunity. Lucien smiled slightly. My work often takes me to different cities. Calder joined them near the garden. Lucien greeted him politely. I wanted to thank both of you for being good neighbors, he said. Calder nodded. We wish you success with your projects. Lucien looked toward the ocean one last time. This neighborhood gave me a chance to reflect on a few important things. Adeline understood what he meant. Lucien continued. Not every lesson comes from business success. Sometimes people learn more from observing how others protect what they value. Lucien offered a respectful handshake to Calder, before turning back toward the moving trucks. By late afternoon, the driveway stood empty again. The house next door returned to quiet stillness. Adeline watched the sunset that evening from her patio. Life in Carmel Ridge felt peaceful once more. Lucien's presence had passed through their lives like a temporary chapter. Yet the experience had left behind something meaningful, a deeper appreciation for the strength of the marriage she and Calder shared. Over time, the story quietly spread through casual neighborhood conversations, not as gossip, but as an example. People admired the way the situation had been handled. There had been no public arguments, no dramatic confrontations, only honesty, respect, and clear boundaries. Neighbors often mentioned Adeline and Calder when discussing strong relationships. They treat each other with real respect, one resident said during a community gathering near the harbor. Another neighbor nodded. You can see it in the way they support each other. Adeline never sought attention for what had happened. She simply continued running her design studio and enjoying peaceful evenings with Calder. Yet the lesson remained visible. Attention from others may appear flattering, but true commitment reveals itself when people choose loyalty even during moments of temptation. One evening, while walking along the coastal path, Calder glanced toward the ocean and spoke thoughtfully. Life gives people many chances to test their values. Adeline smiled. What matters is how we respond. Calder nodded. Exactly. The sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, while waves rolled gently toward the shore. Adeline looked at the peaceful neighborhood behind them. Carmel Ridge had returned to the calm life she always appreciated, but the experience with Lucien left a quiet reminder. Loyalty is not simply a promise spoken during a wedding ceremony. It becomes real through everyday decisions, and sometimes the greatest strength of a relationship shows itself when temptation quietly knocks at the door and receives a clear answer. Every relationship eventually faces moments that reveal its true strength. Some challenges appear suddenly through conflict or disagreement. Others arrive quietly through situations that test personal values. Adeline's experience in Carmel Ridge showed something important. Loyalty rarely proves itself when life feels comfortable. During calm seasons, commitment seems easy. Partners share routines, enjoy peaceful evenings, and assume their bond will always remain stable. But real character appears when pressure enters the picture. Lucien's presence introduced that pressure into Adeline's life. His attention arrived gradually. Polite conversations turned into invitations. Thoughtful gestures appeared during moments when her husband's demanding schedule kept him away. At first, the situation looked harmless. Many people might have accepted those gestures without thinking twice. Yet loyalty is not measured by how someone behaves when circumstances feel simple. It shows when someone chooses boundaries, even when another path might appear easier. Adeline never allowed admiration from another person to weaken the promises she made during her wedding. She recognized that protecting a relationship requires daily decisions, small choices, clear limits, honest conversations. Her response to Lucien's persistence did not involve confrontation or anger. Instead, she relied on the values she learned long before she ever married: patience, respect, responsibility toward the person she loved. Those principles guided every step she took, and in the end, they protected the life she built with Calder. Because loyalty becomes visible not through speeches or promises, but through the actions people take when their values face pressure. Another lesson from Adeline's story involves a truth many people misunderstand. Attention often feels powerful. When someone notices your work, your ideas, or the small details of your daily routine, it creates a sense of appreciation. That feeling can be pleasant, especially during periods when life becomes busy or routine. Lucien understood how attention affects people. His gestures appeared thoughtful: fresh pastries, invitations to events, conversations filled with compliments about Adeline's creativity and calm presence. None of those actions were openly disrespectful. Yet attention alone does not equal love. Love involves responsibility. Love protects commitments instead of testing them. Lucien admired Adeline's character, but his admiration existed outside the boundaries of her marriage. That difference mattered deeply. True love does not place someone in situations that threaten their loyalty. Instead, it supports the commitments they already value. Adeline recognized that distinction clearly. She appreciated kindness when it appeared, yet she never allowed attention from another person to redefine the meaning of her relationship with Calder. her focus remains steady. Because love grows through shared effort between partners who respect each other's time, dreams, and responsibilities. Attention may create temporary excitement, but respect sustains relationships for years. The difference between those two ideas shapes many decisions people make in life. Adeline's story reminds us that admiration from others can feel flattering, yet it should never replace the deeper commitment shared with someone who has already earned our trust. One of the most powerful parts of Adeline and Calder's story is how they handled the situation together. Many couples struggle when outside attention appears in their lives. Sometimes people hide uncomfortable details out of fear that honesty might create conflict. Adeline chose a different path. When she realized Lucien's persistence had begun affecting her thoughts, she spoke openly with her husband. That conversation required courage. Honesty can feel uncomfortable at first, especially when discussing situations that involve other people. Yet openness strengthens trust. Calder listened without anger. He respected the clarity with which Adeline explained the situation and recognized the loyalty she had shown from the beginning. Their response to the challenge was not dramatic. They simply focused on rebuilding the time they spent together. Friday dinners returned. Evening walks along the harbor became part of their routine again. Small moments of connection helped reinforce the foundation they built over years of partnership. Strong relationships do not survive through hope alone. They require active care. Just as Adeline's parents restored antique furniture through patience and attention, marriages also require consistent effort. Time, communication, mutual respect. When couples protect those elements, outside distractions lose their influence. Adeline and Calder's story shows that loyalty does not exist in isolation. It grows stronger when partners choose honesty and invest energy into the relationship they value most. And when both people protect that bond, challenges from outside forces lose the ability to create lasting damage. Temptation often appears in subtle ways. It rarely announces itself loudly or demands immediate decisions. Instead, it approaches through small moments. A compliment, an invitation, a conversation that feels slightly more personal than expected. Many people assume they will recognize temptation easily, but in reality, it can arrive disguised as kindness or admiration. Adeline's experience revealed how important self-awareness becomes during those moments. She never viewed Lucien as an enemy. He remained respectful throughout their interactions. Yet she recognized that the attention he offered could slowly influence emotions if she ignored its effect. Rather than pretending nothing was happening, Adeline examined the situation honestly. She asked herself important questions. Why did Lucien's gestures feel noticeable? What emotions did his attention create? How could she protect her marriage while still maintaining respectful interactions as neighbors? Those reflections guided her decisions. Instead of allowing confusion to grow, she established boundaries early. She declined invitations. She kept their conversations professional. Most importantly, she spoke openly with Calder. Personal values become meaningful only when people apply them during complicated situations. Adeline's story reminds us that temptation is not simply about dramatic choices. It involves recognizing subtle influences before they grow into something stronger. When people remain aware of their principles, they maintain control over their decisions. And those decisions ultimately shape the direction of their lives and relationships. Stories like this often leave us with simple yet meaningful reminders about life. Every person faces moments when outside influences test the strength of their commitments. Sometimes those influences appear through opportunities, other times through admiration from people who recognize qualities we might overlook in ourselves. The important question becomes how we respond. Adeline never forgot the lessons she learned as a child in her parents' furniture workshop. Strong things last when people protect them. Those words guided her long before she met Calder. They guided her during moments of temptation, and they continued guiding her as she and Calder strengthened their relationship after the situation with Lucien ended. Life will always introduce unexpected circumstances, busy schedules, new acquaintances, situations that challenge personal boundaries. Yet the values we carry inside ourselves determine the outcome of those moments. When people act with honesty, patience, and respect, they protect the relationships that truly matter. Adeline's story does not focus on conflict. It focuses on quiet strength, a woman who remained faithful to her principles, a husband who trusted his partner and chose understanding over anger, and a situation that ultimately reinforced the importance of loyalty rather than weakening it. Those lessons apply far beyond the hillside streets of Carmel Ridge. They apply to anyone who values commitment and the effort required to protect meaningful relationships. As the sun slowly sets along the ocean cliffs of Carmel Ridge, Adeline and Calder walk side by side along the coastal path. The sky glows with warm colors, while waves move steadily below the rocks. Their conversation flows easily, just as it did years earlier when their relationship first began. Moments like this remind them why they chose each other in the first place. Trust, respect, shared values. The path ahead of them remains clear because they continue protecting what they built together. And their story leaves us with an important question. Do you believe loyalty survives temptation? Many people face situations where admiration from others appears during quiet moments of life. Some relationships weaken under that pressure. Others grow stronger because both partners choose honesty and commitment.
I realize I crossed the line. I'm sorry.
I appreciate you saying that.
What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone else reflect on their own relationships. If you enjoy meaningful stories about love, choices, and the lessons life teaches us, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Twisted Love Tales with Mr. Easton. There are many more stories ahead that explore the decisions people make and the values that shape their lives. Until the next story, remember this: the strongest relationships are not the ones that never face temptation. They are the ones where loyalty answers temptation with clarity and strength.
This is so peaceful.
It is. Just you and me.
I could walk here forever.